Hello, today we're going to work on drawing Reepicheep from the Chronicles of Narnia. And this little guy uses a lot of interesting shapes. We've got some sort of those kidney beans again, jelly beans. I like jelly beans. Sounds a lot nicer. That are narrower at one end than another. So we'll go into all of that. In the meantime, go ahead, grab your paper, grab your pencils, and let's get started. So when I say jelly beans, we are looking at something like this, except I'm going to usually be going much skinnier at one end than another. These are great for drawing different parts of animals and cartoon characters. There's the kind of more standard jelly bean shape, but when you keep it narrower at one end than another, you have a lot of things you can do with it. You can say you have a character here. You don't need to follow along yet. I'm just giving an example. So say you've got a person here, and there he is. He can bend either direction. Right now he's bending forward. You kind of see the way that the shape is going, but he could even bend further. You can get these little kind of overlaps in the shape so that he could bend way down. And he could bend backwards. He could bend all kinds of directions. So the jelly beans are nice. They're nice and squashy and very, very useful for what we're doing here. So if you're comfortable with those, we'll get started. I would recommend drawing lightly for this one because there will be a lot of refining of the drawing, erasing some early lines and adjusting later ones. I'm going to take that eraser down a little bit because that is ridiculously large. All right. So the first thing we're going to want to do is draw his body. This is going to be one of those jelly bean shapes. It's going to be a very long, thin one that is narrower at the top. And then we're going to have him looking off to the left. So we will put his head right here. This is going to be pretty much another jelly bean shape with his mouth area being smaller. And you'll see I'm just going to connect those right there in front. I'm not so worried about the back. It gives his head a nice shape. And if you erase that, you can start to see how it kind of looks like a mouse. I'm going to also erase a little bit right here because you're going to want to give him his mouth and his nose. So if you see there, we've got a couple of overlapping U's, 3 of them almost, making a mouth shape. And then I want to refer back to something I did earlier. Okay, there it is. Usually I focus a lot on drawing Reepicheep's eye, and I could not remember drawing the eye on the initial doodle. I was wondering, wait a minute, I did give him an eyeball, and yes, I did. It was just a very small one. So There we go. I think I've got his mouth a little too small for my taste, so I'm going to actually, and his chin, I'm going to actually rework that a little. Okay. Then you're going to want to give him an ear, and the ear is going to kind of pop up like that. This will be the ear nearest to you. A little curve, and then rounding it out. Don't go too big. And then we'll do another just below it that goes up to the upper edge of the ear. And we will want to erase that little line in between. Maybe a little bit more because we're going to be giving him that hat that he wears later on. So we won't actually, you know what? No, let's go ahead and do that right now because then I can add his other ear. So you're going to want to draw a connecting line from where the top of his head meets his ear, at the top to where the back of his head meets the bottom of the ear. And then you can draw another line that goes right along below it. And we will draw the feather in a minute. And then move forward a little bit, do a similar shape to the first ear, and just round it off so that we have that little ear in the back, and then tidy up your drawing if you want to. I'm going to draw a little dark area right here inside where his ear meets, goes inside his eardrum. And I'm going to clean up the inside there where we've got a line left over from drawing his head. So that looks a little more realistic. All right. Next thing we're going to want to do, you could draw these as full kidney beans, you don't have to, is we're going to draw a couple of arms. And these are just going to be, again, some tapered shapes, but don't really need to draw the whole kidney bean shape if you can kind of see what's going on there with the parallel is not the right word, but make sure it tapers toward the end, toward where his hand will be. Okay, then at the top, let's swing around a little thumb. We'll give it a little bit of a point, because of course mice have pointy toes. And then you can do some little fingers. And over on this side, let's make sure you go up a little higher because his shoulder, we're going to start this one up near his shoulder. And we're going to swing it around, and it's sort of this shape. And I've made his wrist too narrow compared to the first one, so we'll adjust that. And again, you can give him some little claws. That's an interesting arm. Might work better if the bottom were a little straighter. Right here, give him a little more definition. Okay, for the legs, we're going to go ahead and they're almost those jelly beans. You don't really need to do more than ovals, just to give him the suggestion of where his upper thighs would be. And then you can do a couple of lines that taper in slightly and then out again. And since this front foot, not front to us, the one the one nearest his upheld hand on the left, that's the foot that's going to be most in profile. And then the other will be slightly in front of it and facing a little more toward us. And then you're going to want to kind of blend in that body to the muscles of his legs and erase what's left over. Erase what's, yeah, there we go. Okay, so you've kind of got a suggestion of muscles there. I'm going to remove this line so we can kind of see that that arm is attached to his body. And then we are going to give him a little sword. This is always the hardest part, is drawing the straight line. And then there was a design from the book that I really liked where it swirled around more like a cutlass. It had sort of a little, oh, that's not working out at all. Try that again. It sort of comes around and swirls around his hand and then creates the pommel right there. It's kind of a nice, simple way and elegant to draw a sword. Okay, let's go ahead and give him a tail. And make sure that it's properly attached. We wouldn't want to have someone reapply it. You can also give him some fur if you want to kind of enhance what's going on. It also hides any problems you might have had. Sometimes it adds problems. Oh, that was supposed to be an eraser. Make sure to give him a nice eye and leave a nice little bright dot in the middle. You might even want to kind of crinkle it up there with a little line on each side. Makes it a little more realistic. Oh, I really like to give fur on the back of his head. There we go. That's starting to look like a mouse. And then let's go ahead and give him that feather. This is going to be just a long whoosh. And then curl it around and back again. And do that a couple of times so he's got kind of a nice feather. But he's been fighting a lot, so it's not necessarily a long complete one. Although it could be. You could do something more like that. All right, then let's decide where our sun is coming from, and I think I'm gonna put it over here for a change. We'll have the light be up in front of him, and we will do our shading in the back. Now it's fun with fur instead of just doing normal hatches or like this or cross hatching. It can be fun to actually make the fur the shading, and it gives you a lot more texture. And depending on your taste, you can do fur a couple ways. You've got little individual hairs, if that's to your taste. I typically do lots of overlapping zigzags. So you want to do all that fur in the direction that is away from your light source. And make sure you give him a nice shadow that accounts for his tail. Give him maybe a little bit of texture on the nose here. Get color. And, oh yes, we want to do whiskers. Whiskers are the easiest thing to forget on an animal. So you could have one that droops. One's a little longer. Okay, there's a couple extra touches. I'm gonna do some lines on his legs for texture and to kind of add a little realism there, and erase all my cross-hatching samples. And there we have a very valiant mouse. So I hope you had a nice time, and this one takes a little bit more practice, but it's very enjoyable. So have a great day.